I would now request Ms. Mansi to start her session. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Can you just confirm if you can see me and hear me clearly? And go to the next slide.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible and you're visible as well.
Okay, let's go ahead and let's go to the next slide, please.
Pushpal, please start with the next slide.
Okay, thank you so much. So, as we all know, that today's topic is around interviews, and I'm going to cover certain things that we all go through, regardless of you being a student or a working professional. These are the things that I have seen in a lot of students, as well as some learnings throughout my career. First thing, we'll get started with some of the common mistakes that people make in an interview. And these are the things that you should definitely be avoiding while you are appearing for a particular job interview. The first one is arriving either too early or too late. So, currently, because of the COVID situation, most of us are giving interviews online. But even so, if you're giving an online interview, say on any of these platforms like Zoom, Google Hangout, or any of the platforms, make sure that you're not there like 20 or half an hour minutes earlier. Be there at least 5 to 7 minutes earlier. That's a good time frame for you to be there. A good etiquette is also to make sure that you have your camera switched off. So don't arrive right on the time. You have to give yourself some time to brace yourself and your thoughts. Similarly, if you're going to an office for an in-person interview, arrive before 10 minutes, take a breather, brace yourself, have sip some water, and then go in for the interview. So don't arrive too early, and definitely don't arrive too late. Second is try not to be too uptight in an interview. Of course, it is a very stressful situation if you really have been wanting that job, and after a long time, if you have received that particular interview call, everybody understands that. But try to be yourself to show your true personality as well. So don't try to be too uptight. Loosen up yourself in terms of your body language. Be casual while you're making the first interaction, and then jump on to the interview. Next is don't rant all the answers. So a lot of times what happens is if somebody asks you a question that you have already anticipated earlier, your subconscious brain goes like, oh yeah, I know the answer to this. And what you do is you just start talking about it without pausing, without sort of thinking, is this going in the right way or not? Is the person listening to you or not? So always make sure that you're stopping and not ranting all the answers. Try to look at their body language. Are they nodding or not? So these are small cues through which you will know if you are ranting versus you're answering a particular question. Next is not knowing about the company or competitors. A lot of times, interviewers or HRs or anybody in the organization would want you to know what others are doing in the industry or in the market. If you're asked a question around that, you should be able to answer it. So it's always good to be well prepared with what others are doing in the same market. A good website to know that is G2 Crowd. You can look up the company for which you're interviewing. You'll be given the list of competitors, their strengths, their weaknesses. A lot of information is available out there. So do your research well before going in for that particular job or interview. Another good way to know about that company is to read about their blog. So every company will have something going in the news releases or the press or their own blogs. Read up all that well before going into an interview. Next is talking not, I would not say badly, but then talking in a way that is not super nice about your previous position or the current position that you're holding. There could be situations where you're asked a question that why do you want to leave this current position, or what is it that you're not liking in your current job? It's a trick question, so don't talk extremely negative about what you're going through. The ideal way to answer it would be because you're looking out for growth, you're looking out for something different. You have to frame your answers accordingly. So avoid talking badly about your colleagues, your job, anything about the company that you worked in or you are working in or you've worked at previously. And finally, one thing you need to really avoid is not being prepared for asking questions. Although interview is something that we have in our minds as a one-way interaction, but in reality, it's a two-way communication between you and the company as well. So in the first part, they will obviously want to know a little bit more about you besides what you have on your resume. However, after that, it's your chance to ask the right type of questions. So leverage this opportunity to go and ask the right type of questions, such as what is it that you would expect me to do in this particular job? Or how is it that I can make this position better? What is the career transition or the career ladder going to look like? So try to know a little bit about the position, try to know a little bit more about the company's culture. And if the particular interviewer has been in the organization for a long period of time, you can ask them about their learnings. From their learnings, you will know if you are also a good fit or not for that particular job. So be ready with at least three questions when you're going in for an interview. If they don't ask you as well, if you have any questions, if the interviewer doesn't ask you, make sure that you are initiating this, because this shows that you're really interested in that particular job or position. Next slide, please. Okay. And the second part that I want to cover here is about some questions that people usually ask. And there is a reason why these questions get asked. Regardless of the position that you're applying to, if you have worked previously in an organization, or if you're a fresh grad, if you're an MBA, and if you're applying to a particular position, you need to have these three or four questions very clear. The first one is, tell me about yourself. A lot of times, if you are working professionals and if you have gotten into an interview room, this is the first question a lot of companies ask, right? From Facebook, Google, Apple to small startups as well. The reason why this question gets asked is so that it's your elevator pitch, it's your sales pitch to the company. They already have seen your resume. They want to know a little bit more about you from yourself. So this is your time to shine. This is your time to make them aware of your accomplishments. You have to time yourself. Not more than 2 minutes is what you should be taking while answering this question. So here's where you need to sit down and write down what all points you want to cover. You need to make it tangible, in the sense, what are your top three accomplishments? What were the top things that you performed? Keep it extremely result oriented when you're answering this question. Uh, it's good to talk a little bit about your personal life, but not too much. So, for example, if I start talking about I'm born in Mumbai and then I moved to the US and then I moved to Bangalore, that's great, but nobody's interested in listening to all of that. What they're really interested in listening to is, what did I do in a particular job? So an ideal way to start off this sort of a conversation would be, thank you for asking me this question. And I would like to start off by pinpointing the top three things that I've done in my career so far. This is the way you would structure and answer it. And according to your resume, your experience, and what you've done previously, you would pinpoint what were your major accomplishments, achievements, those kind of things. So sell yourself as if you were selling a particular product for a company. This is your time to shine. Remember that. Speak about things, especially in this particular question, speak about things which are not in the resume, especially some things like, I had a difficult time while launching a particular product, but I dealt with it in so and so way. Because in resume, whatever you write are going to be bullet points. You want to make sure that you talk about your soft skills as well, and still you're tying it to a tangible story. For example, like I just mentioned about how I had a difficult time launching a product, and then what were the results. So the company got 30% more revenue through that particular feature or product. Next is the next question that will be asked to you a lot of times is, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Especially if you're going in for your first job interview, if you don't have experience, this is a question that most of the companies will ask you. So on a piece of pen and paper, you need to sit down and write down what are your strengths. And when you talk about your strengths, it has to be something related to a skill set. Okay. So if you're into marketing, if you're applying for marketing jobs, think of what are the strengths that you have when it comes to a marketing profile. What are your weaknesses when it comes to that profile? Make it your profile specific strengths and weaknesses. Structure the responses in a way that it is not too generic. Okay. For example, if me as a product manager, I can say that some of my strengths are UI, UX, understanding customer communication, and some of the weaknesses could be ABC. When you're talking about your weaknesses, also mention that I'm open to learn or I'm open to approach things differently. So it shows that you are humble enough to accept that, okay, these are some of my weaknesses, but I can work in a team to make the product better, or I can work on my own skill sets to make it better. And everybody understands that you can't be awesome at everything. Okay, so be honest about your weaknesses. Don't say I don't have any weaknesses. Always make sure you have these things written down. So top three questions are going to be, tell me about yourself, talk about your strengths and your weaknesses. Okay, it's these are the two. The third one is going to be behavioral. So regardless of the type of position you're applying for, companies want to see what is your EQ, okay? Because that's what you're getting ranked on these days in most of the companies. And EQ, which is your emotional quotient, comes in through a lot of behavioral questions. So somebody will ask you things like, tell me about a time when you had to deal with a difficult situation while taking feedback from your boss. Or tell me about a time when you had to give a negative feedback to your subordinate and how did you deal with it? So be ready with some tough behavioral questions as well. So top three questions that you need to prepare yourself with is, number one, tell me about yourself. Number two, tell me about your strengths and your weaknesses. And number three is, tell me about a difficult time that you've dealt with in an organization. Okay. Let's move on to the third segment. In this segment, we are just going to talk about how best to answer any interview questions that are posed at you. And there is one particular method that I want to talk about, which is called as the STAR method. STAR method is something that can be used while writing your resume as well, and while answering the same in an interview. The STAR method stands for situation, task, action, and result. So while you're framing your answers in an interview, you need to talk about the situation in which you're setting the scenario and you're giving all the details of that particular situation and the example. In the task, you're going to describe about what was the responsibility that was given to you. In the action, you will talk about what is it that you did, what was the actionable item, what were the steps that you took in that situation. And finally, R is what were the results, what were the tangible outcomes and the actions that the actions had achieved. So whenever you're framing your questions, even for the first three important questions that we just discussed, or even when somebody asks you a question in an interview, try to use the STAR method. That will not only give you a structure, but it will avoid the previous common mistakes that we discussed, which is you will not be ranting. You will be talking in a very structured way, and you will be talking about a lot of tangible results. Another aspect is to time yourself, right? So if I'm answering, tell me about yourself, 2 to 3 minutes is tops what you have to time yourself with. Now, how will you know if you're doing it in 2 to 3 minutes? When you have structured this while you're practicing at home, if you're not practicing, then start practicing now. Download any voice memo app on your phone, or you might be having a default voice memo app on your phone. Once you have your pointers ready for these main questions, start the voice memo app and talk about it. The more you talk, the more you will be confident in an interview. Once you're done, just stop the voice memo app and see how long have you spoken for. So time yourself accordingly, because a lot of times okay, the interview is going to be only for 30 minutes or for 45 minutes or for an hour. You don't want to spend a lot of time on only one particular answer. So time yourself by using a voice memo app that will give you more practice and confidence. And have examples ready. Okay, so we all know our past, we all know what we've done previously, but study your resume well, because there will be times when you give an answer and then there will be a follow-up question. For example, if you say using something, you say, okay, this was a difficult situation I dealt with. Using the star method, you're answering that question. Once you've answered that, the interviewer will have a follow-up question. So make sure that you're ready for those follow-up questions also. How you will be ready is by going through your resume, by knowing what examples you're going to talk about. Okay, so be ready with a follow-up question as well. With this, I'm done with my set of the presentation.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your experiences and valuable advice on the skill of giving an interview. Surely everyone listening is more informed on the